Hi, everybody. It's Jay, and I am back in the booth again with you for another sneak peek video preview of this week's audiobook release here on Say with Jay. Now, before you hit the next video button, this isn't what it looks like. Exactly. I'm merely marking the changing of the seasons, and we're about to enter my favorite season of the whole year. Of course, I'm referring to college football season. That's all I'll say about it. But if you've got a favorite college football team that you're rooting for, let us know in the comments. No, I'm sure you're here for the sneak peek preview of this week's audiobook release here on Say with Jay. This week, our new audiobook is Cowboy Dreaming Alone. It's the 5th book in Jessie Gussman's Coming Home to North Dakota sweet romance series, and it's a good one. But there are a couple of things to look forward to in this preview. One, because it is a new release. We'll be doing a live reading here in a few minutes. Secondly, if you've been following our videos of late, you'll know that Jessie has been including foods in her books in this series, and I've been doing little cooking segments to make that recipe. Today, I'm very excited that we're doing that again, this time for a Midwestern favorite, especially for people in Kansas and Nebraska. It's the Bierock. Now, if you've never heard of it, don't feel bad. As a Southerner, I never had. But to put your mind at ease, it involves neither beer nor rocks. A Bierock is actually a pocket sandwich that was brought over to our country in the 1870s by German-Russian Mennonites who settled in the Kansas-Nebraska region. And these folks needed a good food that the men could take out in the fields or factories with them that was both hearty and easy to handle. And that's where the Bierocks originated. It's a super accessible recipe. It's very simple. It's 5 ingredients plus salt, pepper, and paprika. On top of that, it can be really quick to make, especially if you use a couple of store-bought shortcuts. Let's take a look at the ingredients now. For Bierocks, you need basically 1 diced onion. You need a pound of ground beef. Now, I strongly suggest you go with the lean mix, like the 93-7 mix of ground beef, so you don't have to mess around with the fat later on. You need some sliced cheese. Use your favorite sliced cheese. Here I'm using Colby Jack, but a nice cheddar would be good. I've heard of people using Velveeta, whatever you like. Next, you need sliced cabbage. Now, you can certainly slice your own, but if you find yourself running behind like I often am, this angel hair coleslaw mix is perfect. Then next, you need dough. Again, to save time, I use store-bought pizza dough. Now, let's look at the steps to make it. The first thing you want to do is we're going to make the filling. To do that, you're going to brown your ground beef, and you want to season it generously with salt, pepper, and paprika. Season it to taste. I even, will taste a little bit and add a little more as we go. When it is brown, add in your onion and your cabbage. And either stir it very carefully or use a bigger skillet. I never seem to be able to remember to do that. Anyway, you want to let that cook, and you're going to stir frequently until the onions and the cabbage start to soften. Now, once that's done, set it aside. Set your oven to preheat to 425 degrees, and we're going to get our dough ready. I take the pizza dough out, put it on a floured surface, and spread it out and roll it out a little bit just to get it a little thinner, it makes it a little easier to work with. Then I simply take a pizza cutter and quarter it. Just makes it really simple. It's simple to divide it that way. Next, to build your bierock, you want to take one piece of dough, lay down a slice of your cheese on the dough, then spoon your mix on top, about a quarter pound or so. Then you start pinching up the corners, pulling them to the center, and pinching as you go. When you have them all together, be sure to pinch the seams really well. You don't want any holes, no leaks, or anything like that. Then you carefully flip it over and place it on a parchment paper lined pan or baking sheet. You want to repeat for the remaining dough, and then this step's purely optional, but I like to add a little bit of olive oil. You can use melted butter, but then sprinkle a little bit of salt on the top. Next, you place it into the oven for 7 to 12 minutes until they're your desired level of brownness on the top. Pull it out, and there you go. A quick, hearty, filling sandwich your family will love. All right, now let's talk a little bit about Cowboy Dreaming Alone. Cowboy Dreaming Alone is the story of Nolt Powers. We've met some of the Powers brothers in the previous books, and Nolt is the oldest. And like most oldest children, yours truly included, they tend to be a little bossy, maybe a little commanding, but Nolt is very no-nonsense. He also happens to be still pining for a girl that he fell in love with back in high school, who chose someone else. Nolt finds himself the target of the peacemakers, Sweetwater's resident Cupids and matchmakers. They want to match him up to his baby sister Sadie's best friend and roommate in college, Shasta. Shasta Bingley is an artist, and she's just moved to town from Nebraska, and she's just gotten to town, just gotten established. Nolt isn't interested because she's 12 years younger than he is, and at their stage in life, he's afraid that's far too big a gap. Can the peacemakers pull their magic once again? Can a near tragedy bring them together? Of course, you will have to come back on Friday to get the full story, but here is a little sample of Cowboy Dreaming Alone. Hope you like it, then come back on Friday to see what happens here on Say with Jay. We were hoping you would take this to the new girl in town, Shasta, Miss Charlene said, handing a box to Nolt. When the ladies had called him to the church basement where the peacemakers regularly met, Nolt had thought they needed him to fix something or give them a hand around one of their properties. Maybe even give them a ride. But he knew what this meant. I'll take it to the garage and I'll have Sadie deliver it. Miss Charlene froze with her mouth open, her blue hair waving gently as she glanced at the other ladies as though looking to them for help. Nolt grinned as they looked at her with deer-in-the-headlight expressions, like they weren't sure how to handle him. He took pity on them. Listen, I know what you did with my brother Silas and Gladys, and a couple of my other brothers. People are on to you, although I think people appreciate what you're doing. I don't know what you're talking about, Miss Charlene said, still fighting to hold on to the cloak of being anonymous. I'm talking about you working to manipulate people's lives in order to get couples together, playing Cupid. Nolt gave Miss Charlene an easy smile. I appreciate it, actually. My brothers needed to get married, and when you match people up in Sweetwater, they have a tendency to stay here. Our town is benefiting from young married couples choosing to raise their families here. I'm not complaining. Miss Charlene put her hands on her hips, her lips flat and her expression annoyed. Then why are you not cooperating? You need to deliver this quilt, and you need to do it yourself. I appreciate it for other people, but I'm not available, not interested. I'm not going along with it. You sure look like you're available to me, Miss Kathy said, looking pointedly at his bare left ring finger. I don't have any interest in being married, and especially not to the little girl in the apartment you're sending me to. She's a grown woman. She's out of high school and graduated from college. I have it on good authority from Patty's Diner, Miss Teresa said, always wanting to make sure everything was accurate. That makes her 12 years younger than me, because she was my baby sister's college roommate. Regardless of the age difference, although that's an issue, there's someone else, and I'm not interested. You're dating? Miss Charlene said, her brows going up, showing her surprise. No. Normally he didn't talk to the quilting ladies this much, but he figured that he'd be dodging their attempts to set him up with Shasta, and he didn't have any trouble remembering her name. He just acted like he did so they wouldn't jump on the fact that he knew it as proof that he was interested, unless he set the record straight, which he just did. You're not married, Miss Vicky said, her voice thoughtful. No. Then you're available. No. He couldn't explain to them that he'd fallen in love once, and for him, he'd never fall in love again. Alana had been the only one, and she would always be the only one. It still pinched a little to think about her choosing Jack over him. He hadn't tried to keep up with her after that. But he thought about her a lot, tried not to covet, and definitely tried not to wish things had turned out differently. In his experience, it was always better to look forward than back. There is no reason why you can't deliver the quilt. Miss Charlene crossed her arms over her chest and lifted a brow at him, like he was an errant child, instead of a 6-foot-tall, 34-year-old adult. And there's no reason why Sadie can't do it either. They're great friends, and Sadie will be thrilled to go visit Shasta for a bit. Well, Sadie can't do it because she's busy. Miss Charlene shrugged her shoulders and held her hands out, like she was going to take the box from him. What do you mean? She's not busy. She's at the trucking company office where she always is, and she just left, Miss Teresa said, holding up her phone. The screen showed some kind of text, although she was too far away from Nolt for him to be able to read it. She just left. She didn't have anywhere to go today. He didn't know that for sure, but usually when Sadie took off, he knew it. Marigold, their sister-in-law, took over for her. Sadie had a ski trip coming up, but she wouldn't be taking Miss Teresa shopping if she was on her trip. She did. She's on her way to pick me up, because I have to go to the store. You do, Nolt said, his eyes narrowing at Miss Teresa. I suppose that need to go to the store just popped up, I don't know, a minute and a half ago? It might have. Still, Sadie is busy. She can do it after she takes you to the store. We're going to the mall in Rockerton. We won't be back until tonight, Miss Teresa said, and Nolt had to hand it to her. She could think pretty fast on her feet. Normally, he didn't go for the easy way. He was always looking for the best way. But in this instance, when he had 4 ladies working against him, the best thing to do seemed to be to capitulate and just take the quilt. He moved the box a little away from Miss Charlene's outstretched hands. "I'll take it, but don't get your hopes up, because what you guys are trying to do is not going to work." "Oh, I wouldn't bet on that," Miss Charlene said, her face smug. But then she changed her look. "Although you're probably right. Probably you'll just not take the quilt and nothing will ever come of it, and you'll die a lonely old man, never knowing what you missed because you wouldn't take the quilt today." Nolt shook his head, and he didn't mean to laugh, but he couldn't keep from smiling, although he didn't roll his eyes. "I'll take the quilt. I'll give it to my sister's friend, and I'll come out unchanged." He shook his head. "Anything to make you ladies happy. After all, you guys do an awful lot for this town. Far be it from me to try to put a roadblock in your plans." "Well, if you're really not blocking our plans, ask her out while you're there." Nolt laughed outright at that. "That would be like dating my sister. Don't make me go there." He grabbed the box, grabbing the doorknob as Miss Charlene said, "Your sister is an adult woman, in case you hadn't noticed." "She's a kid, wet behind the ears." He didn't really mean it. He knew his sister was an adult, and she definitely was more mature than what he gave her credit for sometimes. But there was a big difference between a 22-year-old and a 34-year-old. A lot of differences in life experiences, a lot of differences in maturity and wisdom. He wanted a woman who matched his life level, not one who was just starting out, stars in her eyes and all of her interests devoted to having a good time. He'd been in his 20s once, and he knew how it was. Hi, this is Jay, and thanks for listening. If you're ready for another great audiobook, here's one we think you might like. Or check out the playlist with all our latest releases. Don't forget to subscribe to Say with Jay, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us what you liked in the comments.